What's up, everybody? We wanted to take a quick moment to remind each of you to please like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast. Tommy,
Ring that bell.
ring the bell. It goes a long way to support the podcast. Besides that, Tommy and I offer online coaching. The links for that will be below. The link for my merch store will be below as well. And without further ado, we bring to you a Thinking Man's podcast. A Thinking Man's podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph PIRCHER. With me, as always, the beast on the West Coast, Mr. Tommy Stiles. What's up, Tommy? How are you?
What are we doing, man?
Doing all right? Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know what I was going to say, actually, but yeah. So let's do this. We're talking about a topic near and dear to both of our hearts, especially yours at this point. I don't know of anybody that's spent more dedicated time just smashing food to get huge. So today we're going to be talking about nutritional strategies or diet strategies for off-season growing phases. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, and so Tommy and I are going to talk about some different considerations when you're in that situation, when you're eating to just be as big as humanly possible. So without further ado, Tommy, take it away, pal.
Yeah, so I think the value we can provide in this is certain considerations and strategies once you're already in the phase. We don't need to highlight when you're in a massing phase, you need to be eating a lot of food and in a surplus. I think that's evident by now. Anyone following bodybuilding gathers that. What kinds of foods do you need to be eating? So I've found, and I've done both over the years, the whole mixture of clean food and dirty bulking. That doesn't work once you get to a certain point. You've been doing that a while. There may be digestion issues that come up. So you can only grow off what you can digest. And I heard that a lot when I was younger, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And then you start to have some of these digestion issues, heartburn, acid reflux, chronic bloating, poor bowel movements, gas. It's just miserable to live in your own body. Off season requires a different mind state as it is. But if you have poor digestion, it becomes even harder, and your mental takes a hit too. I mean, the gut is the second brain. So I think first and foremost, while you're pushing calories, it's paramount to monitor digestion. And we kind of touched on how to report digestive issues last week's episode. But just some quick things, some quick hitters is are you noticing you're bloating consistently after certain meals, certain foods? There may be certain foods along the way in your bodybuilding journey that worked at one point that no longer work. You have an intolerance. For me, oats. I used to eat cups of oatmeal. I haven't touched oats in years now. So pay attention to trigger foods that give you instant, really bad smelling gas right away. That's not sitting well with you. There are certain meats that, I have clients report that on. We pull the meat, all of a sudden the gas is gone. Okay, you just have some sort of intolerance or allergen or whatever. And then on top of watching bloating, watch heartburn. I know America's protocol for dealing with heartburn is to pump you full of PPIs. The omeprazole is the common one, the Nexium. That's just a Band-Aid. That will take away the heartburn, but that's not going to help long term. What you want to do is to circumvent that is betaine HCl. So I've been a proponent of that. You're actually taking more stomach acid, or you're taking acid to help break down food. You got to think you're going outside of the norms of being a regular human. So you need more acid because you don't have enough stomach acid to break down the food. So first strategy recently, one I just found one I'm going through. I just got sick, got hit pretty hard. For about a week, I was barely getting my food down. I was using liquid Gatorade as most of my carb sources. Back to normal now as far as being able to get meals in, but the appetite still hasn't come back. Completely shot. Every meal is like I'm running into a wall. when I was peak off season at about 5,600 calories a day on training days, and just like sitting, staring at food, trying to will it to get it down. So the move was to pull food back, not necessarily because body fat's in a bad place or insulin sensitivity's off. It's just, I don't have an appetite right now. And to maybe re-stimulate an appetite, we're going to pull back for a spell just to allow me to get some momentum too.
Yeah.
Finish all my meals every day and not be miserable doing so. Get my sleep back on track. So you're still in a surplus. You have to remember that, like,
Right.
maintenance for me isn't just a little bit below 5,600. So even pulling 600, 700, 800 calories, like I'm still in a surplus. I'm just pulling back in order to recalibrate, get everything back online, and then be able to push up again. So that's a strategy. Like a lot of people are getting sick right now. I have clients all over the US that are, ill, dealing with it. There's like RSV, pneumonia. It's whatever it is going around. It's harsh if it hits you. So, and I made a post about this while I was sick. Like there's no points for being hardcore and forcing yourself to go to the gym and train. And
Totally.
I'm not saying to skip out on meals and eat garbage food, but at the same time, like I was eating chicken noodle soup every day as a form of just like something to get my food down. Liquid on chicken makes it go down a little bit better. Like I said, a lot of Gatorade, just mixed, diluted with water, trying to get carbs in. More bread, because that seemed to be easier to get down than like mounds of rice. Work with your coach, talk with them. While you're sick, the goal is just recovery. It's not at that point, like your immune system's compromised. You're not going to be the best bodybuilder you can be during that time. So all you're trying to do is recover, rest, hydrate, get healthy enough to get back online, to get back to 100%. So that nutritional strategy is personal to me right now. Is whether you're sick, whether, life throws a huge curveball at you and it becomes impossible to be an adherent bodybuilder for whatever reason, don't be afraid to pull food back to stay adherent. You're not going to lose muscle tissue if you're still doing all the other things. I'm back to training. I'm doing my cardio. Like this was just a tactical move to help re-stimulate appetite, to at least get it to a point where it's not like every meal is forced.
Yeah, couple really good points there. A couple like main pillars of what we're talking about in terms of like strategies to give yourself more runway in the off season. I think the biggest one that I see made, the biggest mistake that I see made in the off season is food sources. People are just completely unaware of how individual food sources affect their gut, their digestion, and their appetite. Like you said, oats is one of the biggest culprits. People seemingly just group oats into bodybuilding foods, and these are clean foods, and this is a good carb source. And it is, but there's a time and a place for everything. So if you're someone that's having to shove copious amounts of carbohydrates, oats are not a good choice for you. It's loaded with fiber. It's loaded with fats, even trace fats, to where it's just going to slow everything down. And, like you were saying, like I was in a similar spot. I used to eat cups and it wasn't uncommon in the off season for me to do 120 grams, 140 grams of dry oats in a meal. Man, if I do that now, I have some bubbly digestion going on. It's going to be a long day for me trying to get 6 big meals in. So, I think just considering different food sources for what season you're in or what place you're in, and so what are some good replacements then? So, oats, I think just immediately can get swapped out with cream of rice or swapped in for cream of rice. I have yet to come across anyone in all my time doing this that has an issue or gets any type of indigestion or intolerance from cream of rice. And then on that same path of discussion, you had mentioned like different meats and different protein sources might be an issue as well. Egg whites are one that I consistently see included in people's plans in the generic bodybuilding, eat clean bro type plan. where it's a protein source that doesn't have fats or carbs, and it's pretty cheap and easy to get. But immediately, if anyone reports to me, like, and this is usually people that are coming to me as new clients, as part of the assessment, it's like list out what you're currently eating, and then later down in the assessment, it's like, how is your digestion? Are any of these meals individually causing any type of issues? And man, I would say about 80% of the time, people that have egg whites consistently in their diet are the people that are reporting that they have awful gas, loose bowel movements, terrible digestion. They just really don't work for people, especially if you've been doing it for a long time. If it's something where it's swapped in for a phase and then swapped out, maybe you can get away with it, or maybe you just have an iron stomach. But for a lot of people, that is going to be a major issue. So be aware of that. And as a replacement, I may be in the minority here, but I have seen some of my best off-season progress when I was doing 3 cream of rice meals a day with whey protein mixed into it as a protein source, as opposed to having to chew down 8, 10, 12 ounces of meat and then having that sit around all day. I was still doing 3 whole food meals where there was a chewed carb and protein source, but these are still nutrients. Like, I just look at whey protein like it's food. So if you're someone that just cannot get down 4 or 5 or 6 whole food protein sources a day, there's no shame. There's no lack of result from using whey protein, especially if you're somebody like that has a sponsor, or you have a coupon code, or any of these different things where you can get it cheaper than the average person. I think it's a great option. So those are 2 of the big ones that I notice in terms of just like food sources and strategies. And then elaborating a little bit further, I really don't see people ever struggle with with digestion specifically from rice products. So I already mentioned cream of rice, jasmine white rice, rice cakes even. So, there are some particular brands and flavors. Like, I have guys that are massing, and I will tell them, go get yourself the Quaker caramel rice cakes, because it's 12 grams of carbs, no fat per 1 rice cake. So, if you have a full sleeve of them, they're usually pretty enjoyable and pretty easy to get down. And then you're looking at 84 grams of carbs for a sleeve of 7 of them, which is around, like, that's a good size off-season meal for a male off-season bodybuilder. So the food sources, I think, is the easiest and most immediate takeaway, where you can make improvements to what you're doing, and there will be like an immediate tangible difference.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned it firsthand. I think going further in the off season, it's easy to, because I did this, to not eat vegetables.
Yes.
Huge mistake when it comes to digestion, and just you need your macronutrients. Also was guilty of, and this is just a sign of how the times have changed. Like, I didn't eat a lot of fruit in the early years of my bodybuilding. Coaches weren't really putting fruit in plans in 15, 16, 17, at least the ones it just wasn't talked about as much. And now I feel that if you don't have, especially in the off season, if you don't have a few meals with fruit in it, like, what are you doing? Like, there's every one of my clients has fruit in their plans. Like, maybe not 500 grams of strawberries. There's limits, because you do have to watch fructose and stuff like that. But, a small amount of carbs can be dedicated to fruit. It just depends on, like, the clients. Do you get a lot of food in the off season? Maybe you don't get to push that much food into, to give a ton of carbs to fruit is just going to lead you to having hunger and food focus, and you're just never satiated. So that can play a role too. But when you talk about digestion, like, macronutrients play a huge role. And I can't emphasize the importance of vegetables. Find out which ones work for you. Some may not. I mean, I think everybody now knows that, like, broccoli is pretty much a wash for everyone. It causes bloating. You may be one of the people it isn't, but, like, I don't put broccoli in anybody's plans. I don't even need to take the time to find out. Like, we just have, green beans, romaine lettuce, asparagus, I like spinach. Spinach is one of the best
Spinach
greens
is
you can have.
easy.
A
Yeah.
complete source of protein as well. It's not that you're looking at that as what matters, but spinach is it's one of the power foods.
I was gonna say that's one of the few. The term gets way overused, but that is one of those few foods that's like one of these superfoods. Foods, man.
Foods.
But like you said, fruits, vegetables. I'm the same. Where I typically will dedicate a couple meals in somebody's diet. Will have just 10 grams of carbs substituted out from a starch, like for a fruit. So, I use a lot of these cream of rice / oatmeal bowls with whey and peanut butter. And then, so an easy way to get fruits stacked into that is just dump some frozen blueberries in there. And then, like, that's a superfood in itself. So, and then a lot of time too, we talked about like cheat meals and all these different things, untracked meals, whatever. Man, I'm just good with fruits. Like I feel like I get such a satisfied feeling from having fruits multiple times a day, and especially if you can switch out some different fruits. So like if I'm having one of these cream of rice bowls, I'll have some type of frozen berries in there. But then if I'm doing like a whole food, chicken and rice type meal, I'll mix in some pineapple chunks, and that's super enjoyable as well. Bananas are a great choice in the off season and pretty dense with carbohydrates as well. If you're starting to push some really high food volumes, like an average 100-gram banana is 20 grams of carbs. So that's a big one. And then, like you said, the veggies, man, I went so long in certain off-season phases when I was younger where I just didn't even consider vegetables. Like,
Yeah.
and then I look back and wonder like why my digestion sucked, and probably didn't grow as well as I could have, because like you said, we have this phrase where it's like you are what you eat, but it's more so you are what you digest. You can eat whatever you want. If your digestion is a wreck, you're not gonna grow and utilize those nutrients. So yeah, I think even just something simple as fruits and vegetables is such a game changer for a lot of people. I know that it was for me. And so that's something I absolutely implement with most clients. Now, we're going to talk separately on another episode of this kind of nutritional strategies series where we talk about contest prep. And like you said, in terms of satiating hunger, it probably doesn't make sense to have a ton of your carbohydrate total dedicated to fruits at that point. But in the off season, you have plenty of food to work with, and it's going to go besides even just digestion. Like you said, the health factor of having fruits in consistently, you are going to set yourself up to be ahead of like 99% of Americans in terms of health. And, we're talking about enhanced bodybuilders. We are putting ourselves probably at a greater risk with these drugs in than most people. So that's a good way. I'm not saying that eating fruits counters out the risk of taking PEDs, but if you're with a good coach like Tommy or myself, where we have several different prophylactic strategies in place, plus fruits and vegetables, you're going to be pretty well off. I consistently get my guys back, their blood work back. And with all these different things in place, we have different drugs in place. And then fruits and vegetables as a consistent thing, certain health supplements that are always in. It's pretty rare for me, for someone that I've been with for 3 to 6 months at least, for us to get blood work back, and it's all over the place. So all of this stuff works hand in hand. I think that's one thing in our industry is just not to get off on a tangent, but is just a general flaw where we look at everything in isolation, and we have to understand all of this is a system. Our body is a system. It's not just individual things. Well, oh, my digestion is off, but I'm hitting all my macros, so I'm growing. It's like, no, it's all a system, and it needs to be working hand in hand with each other. And it's the same thing when it comes to your diet and your rest and all these different things. So yeah, I don't know what else you had. I kind of got off on a tangent there, but the fruits and vegetable one is such an easily implemented immediate benefit to everyone that listens to this. Anyone that cares to listen to this is someone that wants to improve their physique, and that starts with your diet. And so fruits and vegetables, really, if you're eating 5 or 6 meals a day, pretty much every single one of those meals should have at least a fruit or a vegetable in each of them.
Yeah, I think we we can use like for me, I mean, my carbs have been up towards 800 grams. Like I can afford to have 70 grams of carbs from fruits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
I'll be all right.
Yeah.
In
And
a
really
prep,
the
that may
percentage of it,
change, but
the percentage of that too, that's actually fructose. Like I've heard some people argue like, oh, you don't want to have too much fruit. Like you would have to eat a mind-boggling amount of fruit to get up into those upper limits of actual fructose for it to be a concern.
yeah, I mean the fructose content that you need to watch is in like processed foods and stuff. I mean, stay away from that shit. Any chance, like
Right.
if you're using jam or jelly, like get an all natural one that doesn't have high fructose corn syrup in it.
Yeah.
You know, that's another.
If you're eating fruits consistently, chances are you're not even going to have the urge to use that stuff.
True, and I think that kind of brings me to I just thought of this like condiments, sauces. I think in off season people think freedom, free reign, like it doesn't matter what I put on my food. You do have a little bit more leeway than prep for sure. I mean,
Sure.
You don't have to necessarily count your calories from mustard, but at the same time, like these digestion issues that we're talking about, like if you're putting hot sauce on every meal, that's going to become problematic at some point in your life. If you're 20, probably not. I used to do it as well. Like hot sauce was my life. And then, you know, Frank's Red, I used to buy the 2 big barrels of it from Costco and I could put it down. And then eventually it was just like, felt like I was breathing fire, pulled the hot sauce. Now I'm good. Like you just have to adapt to what your body changes as you age.
Yeah.
So sauces, you know, I tell people like, always go with me. I'm your resource. Like ask me if you want to know about a certain one, just ask me and I'll accept or veto. Like I'll just tell you, nope, can't have it.
Sure.
Like it's just not worth it. But that's where like, you know, I see high fructose corn syrup and a lot of that stuff. And I have clients that like are like me, who need a lot of food, a lot of carbs, and it gets tricky with jobs, like what type of schedule you have. Not everyone can sit down and have a prepared meal 5 times a day. I was one of those people at one point, so I understand that. So
yeah,
you know, English muffins, bagels, putting a little bit of jelly on them, especially post workout. Like I build all stuff like that for different clients. That's where individual variance comes in. But I do tell them like, hey, if I do tell you to have a jam, make sure it's natural and like this brand specifically, if I know where you live or I know what your grocery stores are like. You got to stay away from the bullshit when you're pushing calories up over the course of time. So we touched on fruits and vegetables.
I want to go back real quick because I left one out. So I was talking about earlier, like on the topic of food sources and never really coming across issues in terms of rice-based products. Cereal is another go-to for me as a coach, me as a bodybuilder. If I'm in the off season, deep in the off season, that post-workout meal is typically probably going to be one of, if not your biggest meal of the day. And that's the same thing that I do for a lot of guys when I'm programming, you know, their diets as a coach. And man, I'm yet to come across anybody that doesn't A, enjoy, and B, tolerate really well rice-based cereals. Like who doesn't want to go smash your workout and then come home and pour a whey protein shake over some cereal and just smash it down? I've done it. I've done the same macros to where I come home and do chicken and rice or even cream of rice versus a big, huge bowl of cereal. And it's way more, you almost feel like it's a break from your diet. And then again, like we've talked about, like with cheat meals or untracked meals, you know, potentially derailing or taking away some of your runway in the off season. Man, for months I did that and I never had the urge to have an untracked meal because I was eating a huge fucking bowl of cereal every day. So that's just another consideration for people that are listening.
Yeah, I've put down a lot of cereal. Frosted Flakes was one of my favorites. Rice Krispies.
Yeah. And depending on your digestion and how much food you need to get down and all these different things, it doesn't even necessarily need to be rice based. If you can handle, you know, regular sugary kid cereal, by all means, let it rip. Like I've been known to put down some fucking Fruity Pebbles post workout like a savage.
I did that too.
Too much of it though, like you know, you wonder like some of these processed sugary things, if we start packing on a little more visceral fat than we would like deep into the off season. But even just something simple like Rice Krispies or Rice Chex, and then you dump some, if you need to, like usually because they're a little bit more on the plain side, then I would use like a flavored whey protein, and then it kind of just takes on the flavor of whatever that shake was. But there's no shame or there's no lack of benefit from using something like that either. It doesn't mean that you're not in camp hardcore anymore because you have cereal as your post-workout meal deep in the off season when you're eating 4,500 plus calories a day.
I think that's the biggest point is like 4,500, like off season can be different for, if you're a younger person at 180, you're probably not clipping that much yet because you just don't have enough muscle and you're just going to get fat. So
yeah.
Context is king. So what we're talking about here, like it just may not apply to you.
Sure.
It also may not make sense. Like if you're someone who in a surplus is only having a couple 100 grams of carbs, you're going to be starving if you're dedicating 50, 60, 70 of those to cereal. And then,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? Like, that's where it's like, you might want some more volume from rice. Even, I have back to the oats thing. Like we found out oats don't work for us and they don't work for a lot of people. But at the same time, I have clients that don't have any issues with oats and they can put down 4,000. Like there's no black and white rule. So if you're hearing this and you're eating oats, don't think you're doing something wrong if it's working for you.
Right. Now, if you're listening to this and you're smashing oats, as a consistent part of your diet and it runs right through you and you put the spoon down and then immediately have to go to the bathroom, then it's time to change the food source and it's time to look at your diet as a whole. I have people that come to me that are like, yeah, I love oatmeal. I'll list in the assessment, list some foods that are like must-haves. Like you love to have these foods, and people will put oats. And then 3 questions down, they're like, yeah, it seems like I have a meal and then I'm just right off to the bathroom. And it's like, well, let's think about this here. Like, what are we doing? But yeah, absolutely. And to that same point, right now, because my window to get back into contest prep is fairly close. This is not like a full-on off-season onslaught of food. My surplus is a little bit more modest than where I'm at right now. And so because of that, I'm not doing cereal right now because I would be absolutely starving. If I just put down a big bowl of cereal, I would be hungry again in an hour, and then I'm hungry again an hour after that next meal. And it just wouldn't make sense because my food is not going to be getting that high. So then now I'm just walking around hungry all day. So again, it's, as always, like we say on this show, there's context, and that should really dictate the decision making. But Tommy and I, as always, are trying to give you the framework to the thinking to where you can apply it to your own situation.
Yeah, and I think when we talk strategies, it's obviously individual variance comes into play, number one. But so if I have, say I have someone, male bodybuilder, off season, who has a propensity to get fat, like he can pack on fat just like he can pack on muscle. I may approach him differently than someone like myself who I can honestly say I'm in camp hard gainer. Like I have to eat a lot of food to maintain my weight and to gain weight, no matter what.
Yeah, you're the type of guy, for people listening, Tommy's the type of guy that can eat 5,500 calories every day for 6 months. And then if he goes out and has an untracked meal that is under the calories of what he normally would, you're waking up lighter. Or God forbid you travel and you miss a meal, you're waking up 5 pounds lighter.
That's why I don't really participate in holiday eating because of that fat. Like I don't want to disrupt my process. For most people, they're going to gain weight. It's the opposite for me because it's not I can't match the calories.
My buddy Gary Turner and I were actually just talking about this, and it's like, the holidays cause such an uproar within our community where people have these hard black and white stances, and people will make posts like, if you're serious about your goals, like you're going to be on the money all the time, even through the holidays. And then you have people that make posts and they're like, you are a fucking asshole if you bring your Tupperware to Thanksgiving. And it's like, as I've gotten older, more and more, it's just, I just stay on plan because that's what I want to do. That's what works for me. And the food that you guys are going to sit down and have, like I will sit down with you and participate in all of the festivities,
Conversation,
the food I put in my mouth has no bearing on anybody else. But the big part of it is what you were saying. Like anytime that I have in the past participated, for example, in Thanksgiving, it's like I wind up under eating because you have this like, yeah, like you have like a bigger meal and it's stuff that you're not used to and it might not digest well. And then you go sit down and you watch football, you fall asleep and you take a nap. And now you look up and it's 9 o'clock and you only had 3 regular meals plus a Thanksgiving meal. And now you're way under the calories that you were supposed to eat for the day. So it's
your digestion may be compromised into the next day and the next day.
oh, absolutely.
Like,
And not to get like too nerdy even, but if you're eating like all this stuff that's not normally on your plan and it's you don't know how it's prepared and it's someone is preparing it with love as opposed to your bodybuilding goals in mind, like you are going to wreak havoc on your blood sugar for the next 3 or 4 days, unquestionably.
yeah, I mean, I always tell clients this, and I don't put out like a blanket post because there's enough of those out, but like make whatever decisions you want to make that aren't going to leave you with guilt moving forward.
Yeah.
I have no guilt when I've brought Tupperware to numerous holidays in full blown off season, not in press.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I do not care. And that's just a personal choice. Like I don't
But
like
that's what makes you feel good about you. That's all
we're
it comes down to.
associating quality time with family with food. Like that.
Right.
What if I had like an actual, I had celiac disease and I couldn't eat gluten. I guarantee there's a lot of food I couldn't participate in on the holidays, but it would be accepted because he has celiac disease. But if I make a personal choice to eat my own food and still come and still hang out, still participate, whatever.
Yeah.
It's some people in the industry want to shun on it. Like,
right.
No, family and quality time is about the actual time, not the food or the drinks that we bypass. So absolutely. I just tell clients, like, do what you want to do that will leave you not feeling guilty when you have to check in next.
Yeah. Yeah. I just put it out there. I use like the close friends feature on IG to communicate with all my clients. And I just multiple times the week leading up to Thanksgiving, I put a message out and I just said, hey, if you're not in the thick of contest prep, you have the option to have a completely untracked Thanksgiving meal and dessert with your family. Now, I said that very specifically. I said option because there are some people that I have that are like, man, I just would feel better about myself if I'm just on the money. Like I just feel better that way. And then there are tons of people too that they're like, man, I'm deep in the off season or I'm lifestyle. Like, I love these mashed potatoes and this mac and cheese that my mom makes. And it's like a big sense of pride for her to make it and for us to all enjoy. Well, then great, eat the fucking mac and cheese. Like it's one meal. The only stipulation that I ever really put on things, like whether it's an untracked meal or holiday eating, is to just not eat like an asshole. Don't turn it into a binge where you're compromising the work that you've been doing leading up to it. And then kind of reducing the validity of the work that you're going to do in the coming days anyway, like we talked about. Like you go off the rails, you can really fuck up your digestion and your blood sugar for days to come. And then that's where that guilt comes in because you're like, fuck, I overdid it and I'm self-sabotaging and the scale's up and all this different stuff. My blood pressure's up. So yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to being practical.
I tell a lot of, if you're like me, like my rule is don't undereat, don't fall short. Like if you're going to use this time, like make sure it's to get into an even bigger surplus.
Yeah.
So I tell my guys, like, make sure you're getting at least your protein portions from some of your meals in, and then put all of your carbs and fats to that Thanksgiving feast or two meals that day. Like you can break it down that way, but just don't undereat because then you're running into the situation to be like, you come back from the holidays 5 pounds lighter, and it's like, well, now we got to spend a week getting the weight back up.
Yeah, we're missing time now trying to play catch up. And now that we're on that, I almost feel like since we've dove in, like by the time this comes out, obviously Thanksgiving has happened already, but Christmas is still yet to come. New Year's is still yet to come. So I feel like we could transition even this to a little bit of some strategies that would help this. I don't know that it made sense to do a whole episode on it, but I think putting this out could help people. So in years past too, like, I'm an eater for sure. Like I love to eat, and that's a big family thing for all of us. So you mentioned a strategy that I've used in the past, and it worked out well for me. Granted that you have the perspective to realize that this is a 1 day type of thing.
Yeah.
You don't want it to turn into some type of habitual restrict and binge pattern. But one strategy that I use, and to give credit, I got this from Phil Viz years back, where, if you were going to have like a big holiday meal, or it was your birthday or something like that, and you're in the off season or lifestyle, you could just do your protein portions, like basically meat and veggies 3 or 4 times leading up to that meal. That way you've essentially stashed away all your carbs and fats. And you can, I don't want to encourage people to pig out and eat like an asshole, but if you know that that's just how it's going to be, that's not a bad strategy, because more often than not, if you have an off season's worth of carbs and fats to stash away, there's a good chance you're not even going to wind up hitting that in one meal anyway. So
Right.
in terms of feeling guilt or wanting to participate and have that time and that food with everybody, but also not like let it go completely off the rails, I think that's a strategy that can work. Now, as a coach, you'd want to understand the person's psychology individually before you go ahead and recommend something like that. But I think you brought it up, and I agree. I think it can be a really good strategy.
Yeah. And then, I've done something similar. I mean, and now for me, it's just, I live on the other side of the country for my family, so holidays aren't really a thing, but
Yeah.
I think if you're also someone who's like on the money pretty much 95% of the year, you're not going to have guilt if you choose to go
Right.
all in on that meal or that day, because like come the next day, I'm right back on track. You have the ability to distinctualize like one meal from a whole week. Like, I think a lot of people get caught up in the holidays because we have 3 main holidays, maybe some others if you participate, over like a 6-week period, and they just decide to like let completely go for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think, another strategy that I actually saw Dom Kuza post is like Thanksgiving's on a Thursday, that's passed, but say the next, whatever holiday we have next, like make sure you have all of your meal plan food prepped for that next day. So you're not left waking up and like eating leftovers, or
picking at stuff.
Yesterday's free meal trickles over into like, oh, let's have a free breakfast, and then let's have some desserts that are left over. So
that's
set
a great
yourself
idea.
up for success, and there's not really a reason to feel any guilt. And
Yeah.
then just being logical too. Like, if you're someone who knows you gain weight if you eat off plan, don't be mad when the scale's up. Same for me. Like, I know if I undereat, the scale's going to be down. I can't be mad at that if I didn't eat enough to keep my weight up.
Right.
That's logic.
You can only expect the result from what you put the work in to achieve. So it's not a big surprise if you are someone like, for me, I am one of those guys. Like, if I'm just on the money all month leading up to Thanksgiving, and then I chose to fucking smash a big salt-filled, fat-filled Thanksgiving meal, like, yeah, I'm gonna wake up 3 pounds heavier tomorrow, and that is a direct correlation to my actions. Like, I expect that. Right. And like you said, if you're someone that's just on the money all the time, and month after month you're winning the month, to steal one of your phrases, and you've won all of November, and then you show up at Thanksgiving and fucking let it rip, like, okay, we're in the off season, and the goal all along has been to get huge. Like, it's okay to wake up 3 pounds heavier. The next 2 days, your pumps in the gym are going to be fucking obscene. So just embrace that and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. And then, don't, if you're one of these people who's, maybe you're in a life scenario where like life has just been a dick to you, and all you have control over is what you put in your mouth. I have a couple clients like that who literally elected to tell me before I even discussed the holidays, like, hey, I'm just going to not do anything different on this day, because it means something to me mentally right now. Like, yeah,
absolutely.
You have my blessing. Like, I've been there. I know what that's like to like have no control over certain things in your life, but you can control what you eat. And it's not about being hardcore. It's just about having control of one little thing. So if you're one of those, like, the holidays can be a tricky time mentally for people,
Yeah.
Don't feel obligated because you see 75 coaches online talking about you're an asshole if you stick to your plan. You're not. You're well within your means to do that. And I've done it. I've done it multiple years to the point now where like my family actually, if I was going to a holiday with them, they would not even expect me not to bring my own, like I would bring my own food and they just like get along with it. I think a lot of families, especially if you're a newer, you're calling yourself a bodybuilder and you have a family that doesn't understand it, there may be some resistance because it's not something they've seen. Like, what do you mean you're not going to eat our food? This is what we're eating. It's like, no, I brought my own food. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And like my family's big drinkers. So when I started not drinking alcohol around, they was just like, well, what's wrong with you? Are you all right? Like, why are you, you're Tommy.
It's that they feel almost like an indirect judgment on them. Like, oh, you're too good for us now.
Yeah. And that's its own, I mean, that's its own, like that's psychology more than like food choices. But
yeah,
I got some younger guys who are just like afraid to commit to being a bodybuilder around their family, around the holidays. And like, I get it. And that's almost like, in order to find out if you're a 10-year, your 10-year potential, at some point you do have to like make that transition.
Plant your fucking flag. Like we've talked about on this show, you need to take pride in this is what I do, regardless of what the situation is. Like, this is who you can count on me to be, whether I'm at Christmas, whether I'm at Six Flags with my girlfriend, whether it's this or that, like, this is who I am all the time because this makes me feel good about me. And that's really all that it boils down to. I think just making the decision that makes you feel like you're happy with yourself and your personal decisions. Like we've talked about, I always have and always will take a lot of pride in showing up at Christmas with a fucking meal bag full of food and a gallon of water. And at this point, if you do this long enough, and you show people, not to sound hardcore, but like you show, maybe you have some of these family members that push back, you show them enough times that like you're not willing to budge. Eventually it gets to the point where, like a couple of years back, I did eat at Christmas and everyone was like fucking surprised. It was groundbreaking for everybody. They're like, oh shit, like, hell yeah, like let's sit down and have this food. So, not to totally derail the episode, but usually we would only be talking about holiday eating for people that are in the off season or lifestyle. So it kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about. Now, if you're in contest prep and you're one of these people that's getting ready either for something immediate like nationals or something at the end of the calendar year, or you're going to be somebody that steps on stage in some of the first shows of the season, well, then buckle up because this is what you signed up for. And again, even more so, I think that's a time where you take pride in, my long-term goal means more to me than this.
Yeah, you shouldn't even have an expectation of doing anything. Like it's just another day in the week for you. Like it's not. It is a holiday, but it's also not. It's just it's Thursday.
Yeah.
And that's throughout the year. You know, if you're reverse to the summer, if you're dieting through the 4th of July, like everyone else can barbecue, but not you.
Right.
So just
you could show up. You could show up and shoot some fireworks off. But let's not forget what we signed up for.
Yeah, there is a way to enjoy your family and your holiday time and anything. It doesn't have to be food based. And I think that's like an American thing. Like we center everything around food and drink as part of socializing. So a lot of people get caught in that, especially around family time, because it's just like, I'm just like anybody. Anytime my family gets together, there is more food than is necessary present in this like it's disgusting at times. But I think switching gears from that to I think I was getting into, so if you have a client who's like has a propensity to put on fat, how I would go about bumping calories for them, like say they're at a sticking point and it's like time, like their weight hasn't gone up, their visuals are okay, we're not packing on body fat, we have good glucose readings, all biomarkers are in a good place, and it's time, like you
Gym
are
performance is in a good spot.
You do want to push food where and when you can. It's not just about sitting in one spot. There will come periods where you ride the wave and not push any food, but if you're doing an off season right and you're increasing your training performance and you're demanding more of your body, there should be a reason to push food. So with some of these guys and girls that are more likely to put on fat, couple things I do is like I keep their, if I'm not carb cycling them, well, I keep their non-training day food very, very low, to create a bigger disparity. So training days, we have some more wiggle room to push carbs up. And another strategy is too, guys like that, especially like they might have higher protein because they just, for whatever reason, they're just not good carb processors. But in order to push total calories up, it has to come from somewhere. So it may come more from protein and fat. So someone like me, I've noticed, like I tried to push the 10, 11, 12 ounces of protein meals, and it's just so hard to break down.
Yeah.
And you're also pushing, 700 to 1,000 grams of carbs.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't get above 8 ounces of protein with my, let's say, like chicken, red meats, that like 8 is my cap.
Yeah.
But someone who's more propensity to put on fat, they may be able to get up higher because, they're not eating 500 grams of rice. They might only have like 200. So
Right.
9 ounces of protein, 10 ounces of protein wouldn't be asking too much of them to put down. So that's a strategy I use with just individuals that are just, these are individuals too that aren't like, the scale can shoot up in a week. They can gain 10 pounds if they're not cautious about what they're doing. There are people that can gain 5 pounds in a holiday.
Oh, easily, dude. And
So
your intuition is on the money, buddy. You're ahead of the curve because recently there was some research that showed, and more I've always wanted to show the knowledge and understanding and application of some of this clinical research and all these different things. But more and more recently, I just have tried to get back to fucking bodybuilding. Like, this is bodybuilding at the end of the day. And really, if you see something over and over as a trend, especially helping as many people as you do, and being in it for yourself as many years as you've been, you don't want to discount that. You don't want to just throw that out. So, but with that said, you're on the money because research has shown people that have the majority of the surplus itself come from protein, they stay leaner in the long term than people that use fats or carbohydrates to drive the actual surplus itself. That doesn't mean remove those macronutrients from your diet, but if the driving force, so to speak, of the surplus itself comes more so from protein, it has been shown that people stay leaner. Now, I wonder, just thinking out loud, if part of that is because the thermic effect of food is highest from protein, or if it's because excess protein eventually breaks down to carbohydrates anyway. Who knows? I'm kind of talking through this here on the fly, but just wanted to, because I know we kind of have, it seems like we have kind of two factions of people that listen to the show. One set of people are just hardcore bodybuilders, and then, one set of people, doesn't mean that they're not hardcore bodybuilders, but they also have an affinity for all this research. And this is just a perfect example of how something that you felt and saw intuitively based on your experience, now after the fact, years later, has been backed by research. So you don't always want to turn up your nose at a bodybuilder or a coach that has discovered something in real life,
right.
just because maybe research hasn't backed that yet, because there's a whole fuck ton of stuff that we don't know, but we have a good idea about just based on real life experience.
Yeah. I mean, it was only from seeing it with, enough
Right.
individuals to where it's like, okay, this makes sense to me. And then like, we just talked through it. And then on the contrary, when like I was talking about my case and like the typical hard gainer, like these are people you can probably bludgeon carbohydrates much higher. Protein still needs to be adequate. It's not like you're under eating protein, but at the same time, like I've never found a carb limit that's too much for me. Like,
now when you're in your situation or you're helping someone that's similar to you, do you have fats and proteins just set then at a certain point, and the only thing moving is carbohydrates? Or is there a scenario where even maybe you start dialing back some of the protein as carbs grow higher, because there's a lot of trace protein in some of these carb sources that we're using? What's the thinking there?
I do like the direct protein sources to cover a certain amount.
Sure.
So I don't
Yeah.
rely on the total of like indirect plus direct to get like say 1.2 grams per pound. I'm not like a huge numbers guy, but if that were like just
Yeah.
for the sake of just or explaining it, I do still think your direct protein needs to be, 1 to 1.5 grams minimum. And that even for women, like I've got women who, especially some women, are just horrible carb processors, and they're going to push even more protein.
Yeah.
And you might notice with them, like they actually get leaner when you bump their protein up.
Yeah.
But with fats, like that's one thing I learned about myself is like I'm pretty good with fats. Obviously, I have to watch the amounts I put in, but I still have, 100 grams of fat in an off season at like peak.
Yeah.
In total, it's not all direct sources, but I
Yeah.
find that if total calories is the goal to look at too, like fats are more calorically dense. So
Absolutely.
don't shy away from them. Also,
And they can be super easy to get down. Like how easy is it to add olive oil over the top of the meal? There's no additional digestion or chewing needed.
Yeah. That's the thing too, is like, different tricks and stuff is like, how do I increase calories without increasing chewing?
Or
Because
food volume.
putting down food is work.
Absolutely.
And then I wanted to ask you, because I've done huge varieties here of like how many meals per day are you set on with guys? And then because I think that plays a role into meal timing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was one of the guys that got up to 7 or 8 meals a day.
Yeah.
And it just sandwiched meal times too close together.
100%.
And now it's at 5 with a post-workout shake. And I can spread food out long. I can go 3.5 hours if I set my day up right. And like having that time just to like move around, get steps in, be active, but not have to be bludgeoning food and then sitting down to that big meal with, 8 ounces of meat, 500 grams of rice, some green beans. Like, yeah, it's a lot to get down, but it's also like, I just have to get this down and I don't have to eat again for 3 hours.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I find that digestion is a lot more stable.
100%. I think too, there's more to it because then you allow your blood glucose to return back to a better level before you're smashing food back in. More and more, especially this is more experience as a coach and less with my own personal bodybuilding experience because I pretty much stuck with 6 like 99% of my journey. I had a period early on where I tried to smash in 7, and like you said, it just everything started to run through me, and it was fucked up. I was then like blending a meal and leaving it next to my bed in a shake, and it's just not great. 6 seems to work for me, and then especially like as you get into a fat loss phase, I think there's something to be said for like knowing that another meal's coming pretty frequently. But in the off season, more and more with guys that I help, I've started to condense them to 5 because this whole 6+ meal thing for bodybuilding, I'm finding a lot of people come to me and they have like this unnecessary level of artificial stress about their meal timing and when it needs to be and all this different stuff. And then they're staying up later and compromising their sleep to get meals in. And it's like, hold on a second. Like we could just condense this same caloric and macro total into 5 meals. Like you said, now you have them 3 hours apart. And then like for a lot of people, you go have like on a training day, you go have, it might be with your pre-workout shake, your drive to the gym, your mobility stability routine before you train, your training, the drive home from the gym. That might be a 3 or 4 hour window. And then now you have to stack all these meals together after, and it fucks people up. So more and more I've gotten on the boat of doing 5 bigger meals for all the reasons that we just talked about. And truthfully, thinking ahead to the next time that I'm in like a full-on long extended off season, that will probably be the way that I do it. Because as you know, like with our schedules, like having 2 or 3 hours to where I can just sit down and hammer out work on a computer and not have to worry about a meal is a big improvement to just my quality of life and my productivity, as opposed to needing to be on the clock every 2 minutes to eat a meal. So I think there's a lot of benefits to it. And I tell this to people all the time. There's no magic to meal timing. There's no magic to a number of meals. So when digestion, blood glucose, all those things seem to be better on 5, then I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the biggest is there's no rule to meal number. Like,
Right.
I think I probably got cut. Like, I thought the more meals I was pushing, the more hardcore I was.
Oh,
So
fuck yeah,
I
dude.
wanted to get to 7 or to 8.
Send an alarm to slug down a shake that you had next to your bed. I felt like I was in it, bro. I'm
Yeah, that
like,
was
I'm doing shit
badass.
that nobody else is doing.
Make sure it's casein protein too.
Oh, so it's slow. It's got to be slow.
You can never have like any part of the day where you're not just assimilating calories. Um, but yeah, that's, those are kind of a couple things that jump out at me. Like,
Yeah, I think that's a good wrap up on everything. I think we're coming up right on an hour, and I think there's a ton of takeaways here for people that are um, in the off season, maybe struggling with digestion or struggling with the structure of how they should set up their off season diet. I think there's a ton of takeaways here.
I think the biggest part, just to kind of wrap it up with the mental is like, you just have to be prepared. If I woke up and I didn't have any of the food that I needed for the day ready or with me, yeah, that's anxiety goes up because now I'm going to not follow my plan. I'm going to be scrambling. Anything I had to do now gets pushed. So just set yourself up for success. Either have all your food ready to go the night before, or get up. If you're somebody, get up extra early, get all your food ready for the day, and then set yourself up for success. I think if you can avoid a lot of anxiety and stress that may come from the off season just by being prepared.
And bringing that same level of like contest preparation to the off season.
Yeah, it's easier in the prep because food's lowered. It's just not, your meals aren't that glorious to pack. Like, it's a lot less food volume. So it's, I remember packing prep meals in like under 5 minutes when I was younger. I was like a light heavyweight. Like, oh, there's not that much food, so this will take 2 seconds. Just stay up on cooking your meat and stuff. But and then I think, a strategy that I have always employed is like, when I sit down to have a meal, like if it's a meal I don't want, which is most of them, I like have a little pep talk with myself, like, why am I doing this? What is, if I could skip this meal and nobody would know. And then it's like, well, I would know. And this is what I want. The version of myself that's in the future, standing, winning a show, or building the physique that I've dreamed of since I was 17. The path to get there is through this one meal, this one meal right now.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, especially the last meal of the day. Like, that can be the hardest meal to get down because it's like, man, bed is right there and I just want to go to sleep. I got to be up early. So I think just your internal dialogue of like, what kind of conversations are you having with yourself while you're pushing food and pushing down these meals? You have to think about it like that.
That's a great point. I want to jump in because another like maybe little cue or mental visual that truly like elicits almost like an emotional response from me when I am in that situation and I think about it. And I talked about this with a client just this week who was like struggling with a final meal because like think about like the long-term physique or what that would look like. But sometimes it is almost difficult to even visualize what that is. It's kind of just like a moving target. I have said this to people that compete, and this is my go-to thing. Think about what it feels like when you come out in a lineup of bodybuilders and like, they just bring you out numerically first and you're, just by chance, you're at the very end of the lineup. And then you go through some shots, the crowd's going nuts, the head judge is on the microphone, and then all of a sudden it's 16 and 22 switch, and they just pulled you from the end square to the middle in front of everybody. That's what I think about when it's time to eat. Like, I literally have goosebumps right now thinking about it because for a competitor, for a physique competitor, there's no feeling like that because that just said to everyone over the loudspeaker, please come to the middle because you're the best one on stage.
Yeah. I mean, and then if you need some negative motivation negative to turn to a positive, think about the opposite. Like, I've had my name called second place. There's no worse place than second because you were that close to winning.
Or I've been in that situation where just numerically you're square in the middle when you come out and you hit 2 shots and they're like 31 and
Move out.
15 switch, and you're fucking
Yeah.
you look to see which guy raised his hand, and it's the guy all the way at the end, and you're like, fuck, dude, I'm gonna be last in this lineup.
Or if there's multiple call outs and you're not in that first call out, you have to stand there in a
Just
front
watch.
relax and not make facial expressions, not let your face sink into the floor along with your body. Like, I think about that because I've been there. I mean,
I've been there too. It sucks.
That's where, if you've been there, you don't want to go there again. What's the end all? I need more size. I need this meal. I have to do this. And it just becomes second nature to think like that after a period of time. When you've spent months and months and months in an off season, and we're talking like true, deep, in-depth off season. This isn't like, 4 months between a prep and then back to like, this is calendar years are passing and you're still bodybuilding
like multiple years in between your stage showings. Like, competed in 2021, I'll compete in 2023, then I'll compete in 2025. Like, those are the off seasons that yield dramatic change, which is what we talk about all the time. You play the long game. All of us are in this to be a better version of ourselves than the last time we stepped on stage. So a lot of times that's what it requires.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to wrap it up on. Is just what is your overall mindset dictate? Like, if I look at a meal and I'm just like, fuck, this is so much food, I don't want to eat this. Like, I'm gonna struggle to get through that meal. Whereas like, this is the task at hand, this plate of food right here. Like, people will hype themselves up to go to the gym.
Right.
My thing is like, I'd rather you get into a positive, not necessarily get hyped, because then you're going to be in fight or flight, but at the same time, like, get hyped up about these meals.
No, have some urgency about it. Yeah. And that is really, like you said, like, people get excited to go train to the gym. Yeah, going to the gym is easy. Think about how many average Americans go spend an hour in the gym every day. That's fucking easy. That's the most enjoyable part of the day. That's a no-brainer. The difficult part,
people that do cardio in the morning and train at night, like, there's a lot of people that go to the gym twice a day that like just 100%. To go.
But the difficult part is being a machine with your food and pumping that food in consistently on schedule without fail. That's how you make change. So with that, from my good friend Tommy Stiles, I'm Joseph PIRCHER. This was a Thinking Man's podcast. Until next time, guys, we are out. A Thinking Man's podcast.